Hello and welcome to this year's GIS Day event. My name is Emmanuel Ani and I will be your host for today's event. We're going to be discussing innovating for sustainability, and that is the theme for today's event. I would like to welcome you all on behalf of Giseria. Giseria is essentially a community of geospatial change enthusiasts and technologists who have a passion for community development, city and community growth, leveraging GIS as well as a host of other technologies. With me in today's session are going to be some industry experts in the field of geospatial and also smart city development and geotechnology. And we're going to be hearing from leaders in the industry on best practices and how we can best leverage this technology to help drive the much needed change that our world and our planet is facing. So I'm just going to go ahead and dive into a video by Esri CEO Jack Benjamin, where he talks about leveraging GIS for a sustainable future. And this video, we're just going to look at how we can briefly. Um, it was held at the last year Esri User Conference, and apologies if you hear any sound muffling in the background. We have an airport close to us, so you might occasionally hear the sound of airplanes, which might distort the sound in the background. And other than that, I would like to personally welcome you to this GIS Day event. All right, I realized that some of us weren't really hearing what was being played, so I'm just going to take a few minutes to replay the speech by Jack Tangermond, Esri CEO, who gave a speech at the recently held um, Esri User Conference. And that's the lead us into the next session. Okay.
I'd next like to move on to the theme of this year's conference, GIS, Creating a Sustainable Future. This is a strong vision, and part of the vision was inspired by a recent book that I read by Mario Palma, who was one of the founders of INEGI, which is the large statistical and science and mapping organizations in Mexico. He said the following in his book: lack of understanding of our reality is one of the greatest risks our society is facing. And I think all of us in the GIS community, all of us in the world community can understand this. He also later said in his book, our future depends upon creating and applying that understanding. And these were the beacons that started INEGI, but they're also, for me, they speak to me. These words speak to me because they really are a purposeful way of describing our work. Creating and applying understanding. Our world is a complex and highly interdependent ecosystem that's rapidly changing and evolving. The world we live in is actually not well known. It's fragile. It's rich in biodiversity, which is disappearing at an alarming rate. It's also increasingly dominated by human activities. Geologists are beginning to call this the Anthropocene epoch, that epoch where humans absolutely dominate the life and the history, the life, the future of our world. Today, our world is being challenged because us as humans are living recklessly and unsustainably. And this is threatening our future. Human-induced climate changes and overpopulation are resulting in interconnected patterns of change, steep declines in biodiversity, and many other factors. We read about them, scientists tell us about them almost every day. Clearly, for me, personally, for me, it speaks that we collectively, we as a general human population, but also we as GIS users, are collectively responsible for its future. And it could go many ways. Creating a sustainable future, which I believe is possible, will require that we dramatically change our priorities. I believe in this strongly about making a major commitment to life and our future. And we must act now in order to achieve this. There are many things to do, like restoring nature, improving business efficiencies, reducing pollution, consuming less, implementing sustainable land use patterns, and many, many more. Applying our best science and our best technology and our best creative thinking will clearly be necessary. And I can't help but think and know that geographic thinking is going to be essential in this. Sustainability requires that we see the world as one single ecosystem. Geography, the science of our world, provides the science and the language to be able to do this. It helps us organize and integrate all the factors, environmental factors like biodiversity and ecosystem services, and integrate them with economic systems, spatially, seeing their connections, It allows us to integrate them with social factors. And the maps that you shared, that I shared about your work a few minutes ago, are the evidence of this. It not only organizes and integrates all the factors, it also illuminates patterns and relationships and helps us discover things. It provides us a framework for understanding and applying our knowledge. I like to call this the geographic approach. The geographic approach is a way of thinking and problem solving that integrates geographic science and information into how we understand and manage our planet. And Mario Palma would clearly understand that. It's a holistic approach. It brings sciences together. It's integrated. It supports and is enriched by spatial understanding, and it is also collaborative. The idea is supporting multiple objective solution creating, inclusive and multidisciplinary in its nature. And the great hope, the great vision, is that this will impact virtually every sector of our society going forward. This approach integrates and supports powerful methodologies familiar to many of you here in the audience. Geoanalytics, creating insights and understanding. Geovisualization, a language like through maps and visualization for communicating the content of our world and the context of our world. Geodesign, designing sustainable and inclusive futures. Geocollaboration, engaging all the stakeholders, and geoaccounting, being able to account for all the factors. Setting up measures that are not just economic driven, but are driven in a mixed way, balanced way. And this geoscience and understanding can support our future. It can support our planning, our decision making, our engineering, our operations, how we manage our individual organizations, and how we manage the world. These are all critical. And I appreciate the good work that you are already doing. Clearly, GIS enables the geographic approach, the very tools that you use for measuring and visualizing and analyzing and making predictions, doing planning, making decision makings. All that work that you do is a kind of framework and a process for applying geographic knowledge, this integrative knowledge widely. And as I already said, you're already doing this. You are applying the geographic approach and creating so many solutions for a sustainable future. You are protecting biodiversity. You are reducing the use of precious resources. You're optimizing logistics. You are managing sustainable agriculture and forests. The examples from, for example, the great coffee growers are proof of this. However, clearly we need to scale up our collective efforts exponentially. GIS technology can help us. It's not the only thing, but it can help us. And it is advancing rapidly. It's integrating many new innovations, helping us reach this kind of scale. This will be essential. Things like cloud computing, advanced analytics, the integration of imagery and remote sensing, interactive mapping, 3D visualization. Remote sensing is just a piece of it, but it's a major and significant part. Opening up access to this through the multitude of apps. All of this will help us scale up our collective efforts. GIS is also increasingly becoming interconnected, creating what I like to refer to as geospatial infrastructure. We're connecting our systems, and this in turn is helping us collaborate. It's helping us share. It's transforming workflows and decision-making at many scales. Geospatial infrastructure actually is, and I'm seeing this alive in different organizations like Louisville, for example, it's actually transforming organizations. It's creating a whole new kind of intelligent infrastructure, not just digital infrastructure, not just water infrastructure, sewer infrastructure, or road infrastructure. It's creating a new kind of infrastructure for organizing and making distributed data that we collect available. As a basis for this, it's shared geospatial services organized through portals for discovery and access by apps apps that now support all types of users. This is an exciting time because this infrastructure, and I'm watching it closely, and so are you, is expanding really quickly. It's supporting not only local applications, shared information and so on, but also global applications with millions of users and tens of millions of shared data sets and services that are being made available in this way. It's making billions of maps every day. And these billions of maps are reaching billions of people. They're changing how they think. It's creating a whole new kind of global information system. You've heard me before talk about a nervous system for our planet. My sense is this infrastructure is creating a nervous system for sustainability. I'd like to talk about some of the details of this nervous system. First, geospatial infrastructure is integrating all kinds of data. It can now integrate all types of tabular data and map data and imagery data. It can integrate real-time data and abstract them into these web maps and layers and scenes that we're finding so dramatically useful, so that apps of many types can use them. Geospatial infrastructure delivers powerful apps, not just for GIS users in desktops and so on, but these apps are going to scale with massive mobile deployments for collecting data and also disseminating data. And also the pervasiveness of web apps is just unbelievable. Literally trillions of maps being looked at around the world. And my big hope is that this will continue to expand as it has in the last couple of years, enveloping and bringing us together as a society. Some more details. This geospatial environment, these geospatial capabilities are becoming embedded in other large IT enterprise systems. Our colleagues in other companies like Microsoft and IBM and Salesforce and Amazon and on, Autodesk, are putting maps and geospatial information into their apps. And that is in turn changing how they do engineering and CRM. And yeah, well, you can just look at it. It's really integrating geospatial thinking and geographic thinking into the apps that non-GIS professionals use across the organizations. And complementing this is the enrichment that's happening as a result of advanced GIS analytics. This is allowing us to see new things, create new insights with predictive modeling or the ability to analyze spatial temporal information together, the ingestion of real-time information, and the simple tools to be able to interactively do visual spatial analytics. These are powerful. And then enriching it further is GeoAI, machine learning, and so on. And the ability now to store imagery in the cloud and perform advanced raster analytics. And finally, big data, the ability to integrate and pull on and create understanding from these massive data sets. I want to talk about a couple of these. Big data integration is going to open our eyes. It's going to let us see new things, relationships we never understood before. The ability to access these massive data collections from transactional systems and imagery and link them to the very same tools that you are using will create new forms of understanding. Imagery and remote sensing is one category of that big data, and it is enriching GIS, as we already saw in the examples that you shared, all the way from simple image-based maps for thematic underlays to oriented imagery, integration of motion imagery, dynamic image processing, point cloud visualization, and as I mentioned before, GeoAI and machine learning, which is allowing us to pull off the image feature information that enriches our GIS. All of this imagery data is increasingly being used in raster analytics and modeling, and increasingly that's being put into the cloud. We'll talk more about that together, bringing all of these sources of data together and being able to integrate into your work these timely information sets. Many of you are implementing this concept of geospatial hubs and engaging with other communities. This trend and the technology associated with it first started with engaging citizens and cities. It's all about organizing initiatives and then organizing the teams and organizing their activities. But this is now, especially in the last year, expanded to organizing professional relationships between users of different types. This technology and the organizational strength of the people behind it is fostering many new types of geo-collaboration. And I love that concept because it's essential to make the concepts of geospatial infrastructure work. I'll summarize what I've been talking about. Our world is being challenged on many fronts, and we will increasingly need to be responsible for its future. Part of this presentation is about getting us even conscious about it among ourselves. The geographic approach and geospatial infrastructure, this rapidly expanding new pattern, is going to provide us with the science and also the practical means, the essential means to be able to make this work. But they're not going to be enough. You and your work are going to be essential, providing leadership in your own organization, carrying out problem solving, the kind of things you already do, but thinking larger, thinking holistically. My place in my organization, my organization's place in the world, promoting our best tools and methods and thinking, being able to communicate clearly and effectively, and most of all, collaborating with other kinds of organizations, exchanging ideas, which I really wish we could be doing here together physically. This informal communication is so very important. Also, for me personally, I feel like I'm all in. I'm going all in. And I really want to encourage you to go all in. Act with urgency. These are the times where we really have to get it together and move at many different scales.
All right, that was a wonderful speech by Jack. Um, he That was a great presentation by Jack Tenjamin, who's the Esri CEO and Esri lead. I believe we are all aware of the potential of GIS in driving sustainability and resilience in Africa, and that was an eye-opener into how important the topic of geospatial and GIS is in driving change in the future. So I'm just going to go straight ahead into the next presentation by Joseph Kersky, who won't be with us live, but gave us a short message about why geography matters. I believe that geography is a very, very key science and concept in driving change across the world. Geography is a very powerful language which needs to be spoken by virtually every human being. And in the next few minutes, we're going to hear from Joseph Kersky about why he thinks geography is important. Watch and enjoy.
Hi there. Let me show you this cool badge I'm wearing. It says peace, love, and maps. Now, why am I wearing a badge that says peace, love, and maps? Well,
All right, that was a wonderful brief presentation by Mr. Joseph Kursky, Esri Education Manager and Geography nerd and highly passionate geography advocate. Um, I would like to quickly dive into our next session, um, which is going to come up shortly. But before then, let's just take a quick break and listen to some um, insights from members of the community about GIS and what they have to say about the general impact of GIS in their lives. And I just want you to watch a little clip from renowned rap artist and musician will.i.am about his experience with GIS and how it's really transformed him and his home community. This is an exciting piece, and I think you'll love it.
What's up? This is will.i.am. I'm here in the area that I grew up in, Boyle Heights, in the school that my family went to, my mom, my uncles. There's my uncle right there. Yep, number 21. Now, in Boyle Heights, we have magnet program and an Esri GIS, Geographical Information Systems program. When I was dreaming in the projects about having a career in music, I live right here on Ficus Street, behind the laundromat. When I was in the projects, my mom's best friend name was Dee. And Dee had two sons, Jermaine and Beanie. They were like rough. You would have been like, yo, I don't know if these guys are gonna make it. And this is how crazy and magical the world is. Beanie moved to San Diego, and Black Eyed Peas had a concert there in 2005. He hits me up on our website, and he's like, Willie, it's Beanie from the projects. I'm like, what are you, Beanie? He's like all dressed in a suit, no longer like gangbanging or anything like that. He's like super clean. Like, yo, Beanie, like you really transformed. He was like, yo, I met this teacher that changed my life. I'm like, what do you do now? He was like, GIS. I'm like, what's GIS? Is that a new gang? He was like, no, GIS. Well, like Geographical Information Systems. I input maps and like understand communities. 5 years later, I meet Jack Dangerman. He shows me his maps. He's like, these are GIS. Beanie works with Esri. One of the teachers that transformed Beanie's life was an Esri guy. Me and Beanie, we survived the projects. And education was the spark that altered our course, because we could have just ended up a statistic. And now we're doing our part to get other kids on that path of transformation.
Welcome to my family.
You got a great family. Jack Dangerman had this awesome technology. Type in like 90023 and you could ask the system anything. Like, how many people voted that's been in jail that are diabetic? And there's other ideas like Obama's stimulus plan, where you could see it and it's transparent, was built on GIS. Hospitals for emergency ambulance response use GIS. And to couple all that entry is very powerful. I was like, yo, type into the map how many drive-bys happened in the past 5 years. He was like, we don't have that information. I was like, exactly. Let's teach my kids how to create maps. That way they can input things that they see in the community. I remember going to Shenzhen like 5 years ago. It was a swamp. Now it's making everybody's device they have in their pocket. I want Boyle Heights and Watts to look like Shenzhen. Wouldn't it be awesome to go to, Facebook, be like, yo, this is my CTO Jerome. Yo, where you come from, Jerome? Yo, grew up in them projects. And now Boyle Heights was the case study. And since then, Jack Dangerman and Esri have donated $1 billion worth of maps and tools for K through 12 across America. Started here at Roosevelt.
All right, I'm happy to let you guys know that we have one of our
My name's Abigail Gonzalez, and I am a senior at Roosevelt High School in Boyle Heights, Los Angeles, living an immigrant.
leading industry expert from the Esri Public Sector and Smart Cities team, Dr. Adel Fernandez, with us live in the studio, and I will just bring him in to say hi to the community, and yeah. So, hi Adele. Hi Dr. Adele, can you hear me? Okay, looks like he's not ready now. Hello? Yeah.
Hello.
Okay, hi Dr. Adele, good
Hi.
morning. I'm guessing it's morning where you are. How are you doing today?
Yeah, not bad. Thank you. How are you? Happy GIS Day.
Yeah, my apologies. The plane just flew by. And, yeah. Could you turn on your camera?
Just give me 1 minute. I'm just working on the connections.
All right.
Hi. Can you see me now?
Yeah. Thank you for
Hi.
joining us. I'm glad you made it. Sorry, it was short notice, but I believe
My
it's
pleasure.
worth it at the end of the day. Yeah, so
My
I'm
pleasure.
guessing since you already joined, I'd just like to go straight into your session. The other session we have pre-recorded videos, so it will just be great if you just had the session now. So it's going to be an interactive session, mostly like a dialogue, and we'll get to hear from you, your thoughts, and ask a few questions. So I'm guessing you were able to catch up, but if you didn't, I recently played Jack's speech at the last Esri user conference where he talked about GIS for a sustainable future. And let me just see if I could play a clip from that recording. So I'm going to play a clip from that recording very soon, but I'll just get to get your tips or your thoughts generally regarding GIS for sustainability, specifically for sustaining the future of cities, taking African cities into perspective. What do you think innovators should be focusing on in Africa right now with regards to GIS?
So, well, at the moment, there's a lot really happening on the GIS world, and first of all, I mean, I'd like to wish you a happy GIS Day.
Yeah.
It's to everyone. It's no, there's a few aspects of the technology really that are very stuff that we really haven't been able to do in the past. And today, because we've got faster processors, faster, more data, more accessibility, people are a bit more focused on or understanding more of maps. People gather data all the time, so now we have a bit more for clarity on the basics of the information that we were always trying to collect. And today, when this old data is put on top of a GIS and has a georeference, it kind of makes really the possibilities endless. For Africa specifically, I mean, we work a lot with a lot of the African nations on lots of side of things. So we kind of work very much focus on the UN SDGs, the Sustainable Development Goals, and for us, we kind of think that there is really a lot of potential out of all the new technologies and the data streams that are coming in nowadays. We think we've seen a lot of African nations kind of pick up really a lot in the short past. Just literally recently, in the past 5 years, with all the kind of advancement in things like open APIs for machine learning, data being collected and available online, all the kind of data portals and data hubs that are put out online for people to use for educational purposes, for startups, for businesses, for people basically sitting in the room in front of their laptops. It kind of gives a lot of potential and use for people now to use things like ArcGIS Online, integrate that with machine learning libraries, make more sense out of data. And lots of that, I think one of the big things is all these open libraries that people nowadays look into. A lot of our African nations nowadays kind of plug into things like open satellite imagery, for instance, create models that extract certain aspects from these satellite imagery. A lot of the census data that's put by the UN and by lots of other organizations. We have also what we've called the Africa Geoportal, which is a data hub that is focused on Africa, where lots of our African brothers and sisters kind of put up a lot of the data from different parts of the continent. And what we do is essentially kind of avail that data in a geo-enabled side of things, so it's geo-indexed. It's lots of GIS data that's out there, very accessible. You can build applications on it, build front-end analytics on it. It's a very good resource to look at, and lots of our nations have leveraged this as one of the main resources where open data standards nowadays kind of stand and kind of avail that data for lots of our African neighbors.
Oh yeah.
Hope this answers the question.
Yes, it does. I quite agree with you about the part of open data being vital to innovation in Africa, because there's a lot of buzz in the GIS community about open source, and a large percentage of the community, Giseria and around the GIS industry in Africa, tend to lean towards open source frameworks and technologies, and I'm happy Esri is doing a lot in that regard. But how do you see open source technologies and frameworks, especially open APIs and open data in general, being used in the design space and being a key driver for design innovation? Because I believe there's a lot of design thinking that needs to go into cities and communities in Africa if we're going to talk about sustainability. So how will open technologies, open APIs play, and what do you think innovators like startups, developers should be leaning into?
So, I mean, the word open is obviously a very big word, in the sense that organizations such as Esri and lots of other companies when they create that software, they kind of create based on what we call open standards. These standards have been created by the companies like Esri and lots of all other geospatial technology providers and developers around the world that kind of come together with, I don't know if you've heard of the Open Geospatial Consortium, for example, the OGC, where lots of users, all the GIS users from around the world come together. They sit around and discuss different industries and kind of come up to streamline standard technologies or what we call open standards that lots of any technology provider. So let's say a company, new startup that is hoping to develop a solution to kind of help communities to help a certain problem, certain business unit somewhere. As long as they base their development or their coding based on open standards, that means that if you take that solution, plug it into any part of a huge system, what happens is, as long as it abides by these open standards, it also understands all other systems that come together within this organization. What I want to say is that data that comes in, for example, the data that comes in under certain has certain metadata that is attached to it, has specific explanation of every column or every attribute in the data. The format of the data has a certain look and feel, and that kind of creates a governance model. Whereas if you create that solution, plug it into a big system that has lots of other technologies around, what happens is it kind of, because they're all based on open standards, they can very easily read data from each other from one another to each other. They also are very easy to kind of develop things on top of, because they abide by these rules that are governing the geospatial data around the world. So geospatial, so open standards is one aspect. Now the other aspect is open data. So open data is very much the notion of again, governments, authoritative entities putting the data online in what we call data hubs. Esri, for example, where Jack has kind of very much focused on what we call our GIS hub, which is Esri's version of that data hub that is very geospatial centric. It kind of we have hundreds of governments around the world nowadays that have they create their own data hub. They basically put certain data sets that come from the census authorities, from other authorities, to enable, again, startups, academic people doing research in universities and so forth, to access that data, pick that data up, like the data in my government, in my own city, pick that data up, do something with it, understand it well, and then download it, create an application of it. And in response, what I do is I contribute that back to my government, tell them, well, this is an idea, an innovative idea using the data that you've provided. And therefore, it kind of leads to, again, incubation of these startups, makes these startups kind of accelerate very fast. It also helps governments kind of find big solutions to problems they might be spending, well, millions and millions to kind of solve. And then suddenly a bright African youngster kind of comes up with that bright idea because he has access to the data, the open data that is governed by these open standards, but also has the tools now, all the open APIs that are out there, all the open Esri APIs as well. They're out there to use Esri's tools, and as well can very much kind of plug into Esri's tools, which kind of is provided for many academic institutions and startups for no cost whatsoever to be used.
Yeah, that's a great one. I personally have some experience with ArcGIS Hub, and I've seen great examples of cities around the world using it to do a lot of amazing things, and especially with regards to open data. We have a few minutes left, and I would just like to chip in one last question. Seeing as you have some experience in the public sector, so I'm hopeful that stakeholders in the public sector and government will watch this live stream, and what they're going to be asking is what kind of what strategies should they be looking forward to? What kind of investments in GIS should local governments and state governments be making in order to drive grassroots sustainability? right now? What kind of GIS investment should we make in? Is it AI? Is it machine learning? Is it imagery? Is it you know, community collaborative mapping effort? Is it data acquisition? So what investment should African leaders right now be making in GIS?
Okay, I mean it's a brilliant question, because it comes back really to what's our response, what's our action plan as Africans, and so basically there are three parts, like how Esri breaks this usually into three parts, and this is how we even design our software, which is the data storage part of things, which is where we store data, what we call a system of records, which is where all the GIS kind of tag data, location-aware data is stored. That could be utilities, transportation, and all the kind of data that you're familiar with. But then there is the once you have that data, and this is usually one step in any nation's capital investment. This is what they spend money to kind of obtain, which is the data. Now, this data could be, which is the first component. This data could be, again, satellite imagery, could be your census data, could be things like the government data. But it goes back to the aspect. How well this data needs to be prepared goes back to the aspect of, again, open standards. They need to follow the right standards in order for myself, for example, creating an application in the Ministry of Health, for example, I can access easily data coming from the Department of Transport, coming from the department, from the utilities sector, from the environment agency, combining this data together very easily. They all understand each other. They all kind of follow the same, let's say, ISO kind of standards, OGC standards. And I can create an application very, very fast, understand where pollution in my city occurs the most, during which parts of the day, and so forth. Now, this is how I store the data. Now, the analytics part of things, which is calculating, again, how pollution propagates around my city, around my country, things like rising levels of anything, unemployment, lots of all the issues, the societal or socio-demographical issues that can come up. That kind of comes up with the analytical side of things, which is the second part of the system. And the analytics side today, like you're saying, there's a lot of machine learning packages up in Python, for instance. If you plug into Python packages, thousands and thousands of these libraries are open. You can use them, inherit them, build your model on it, as long as you have the data well defined, well stored in that respect. Now, the third aspect is the accessibility, which is what I was just talking about earlier on. Just again, data hubs, people having access to data, not just government holding data. I'm not saying open all your data. As a government leader, you want to open the bits where you want solution to your problems, and because you want to capitalize, you don't want to get, again, lots of these companies around the world to come and you have to have a big overhead of spending in order to get big ready-made solutions from different organizations. You can use things like ArcGIS Hub, for example, to put the data sets that you think have potential for creating certain analytics that would be very useful, and share that to, again, research students, share another portion of the data, up to startups, to other, again, organizations that you think could very much find solutions to problems you would end up spending millions and probably billions of dollars kind of solving over the years. So it's these three parts: the storage of the data, well maintained, use open data, the analytics side of things, which ArcGIS platform is full of it, and it kind of very easily can bring in a lot of these Python libraries, open Python libraries that I personally kind of worked with a lot, very, very useful stuff. And there's the stuff with sharing the data, again, kind of enables us to communicate the data and having giving people access into the system in order to kind of do all these analytics and all the other stuff that, the fancy stuff that can solve a lot of world problems.
All right. Thank you so much for spending time with us today. It means a lot to me and to the community as well. And I believe that when people watch this video, they're going to go back inspired and excited to try their hands out on all the amazing work and technologies that Esri has put in to make working with GIS exciting and amazing. So thank you very much, Dr. Adel, and I'm looking forward to hanging out some other time. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. Thanks for inviting very much, and hopefully, this day will go even more amazing than it already has been. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you. All right, guys. Um, that was Dr. Adel, who's the Esri Public Sector and Smart Cities Lead, and you heard from him about how um, they're already leveraging a numerous amount of Esri technologies in driving inclusion and in driving sustainability across cities all around the world. All right, so I would just like to give you guys a brief overview of the community and our open data resources um, that we have put together to support innovators and developers as well as analysts around Africa who want to begin to use GIS data to drive innovation in their city and in their communities. So um, you can navigate to our hub site, which is available at www.hub.geseria.com, where we put together a number of resources to allow you to discover, create, and connect with data. So from time to time, we're going to be adding data, maps, resources, you name it, everything will be in this hub. And whatever your community, whatever your needs are, you can find them here. We have data by multiple industries. So regardless of the projects you're working on, be it in agriculture, in business, in education, healthcare, or transportation, you'll find data on this hub right here. And we're going to be having partnerships with stakeholders around governments in different countries. So would you like to reach out to us to help your community build out a geospatial strategy? Just head on to our hub page or send an email and we will be in contact with you. All right, that's um, the much for now. We're going to break off into a short break session, and when we come back, we're going to listen to um, experts and excerpts from the recently held SRE Geodesign Summit, where we're going to listen to the importance of building conservation resiliency with geodesign.
shine, bling body. Falling on the shots, bring body. Crown on your head, got a king body. Don't have the key, you a king, you know it. King already, my baby, you know it. Pop everything, everything, you know it. King already, already, you know it. Shine already, it's time already. The line already, it's time already. Shine already, it's time already. The line already, it's time already. Can't stop it, this is no, no, no. Rap is a bunch of no, no, no. Can't stop it, this is go, 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 go. I'm in love, I want you to go, go, you me, roller. Everybody how they come, guy. Every king be strong, guy. King the rule, them long, guy. Whoever we love. Real king always be you. Yeah, my baby, love. Some people are love. Sang already, I say sang already. You like already, I say like already. You see the already, I say you got the already. Shine your body, shine your body. I'm the king, you know it. King already, already, you know it. Top everything, everything, you know it. King already, already, you know it. My body's all got a king body. Body gon' shine, bling body. Calling on the shots, bring body. Down on your head, got a king body. Don't have the key, you a king, you know it. King already, my baby, you know it. Top everything, everything, you know it. King already, already, you know it. Shine already, it's time already. 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 It's light already, it's time already. Shine already, it's time already. It's light already, it's time already. Can't stop it, me say no, no, no. Royalty say don't you no, no, no. Can't stop it, me say go, 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 go. Bubble up and watch it go, 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 go. Time is on my fist, my empty bitch, Mommy, rest your head, take your crown off, Woke up in the phone, need to take it slow, I said I'm moving so fast, need to take it slow, take it slow. Take it slow,
All right, welcome back to our live stream. We are having a great time, and I'd just like to let you all know that we are advertising memberships to the community, regardless of your GIS level of proficiency, whether you're an enthusiast, you just want to learn about maps, GIS, or you're already a developer, you're building applications, you're heading a startup or a team and you want to try out the ArcGIS platform, just reach out to the community at community@giseria.com and we'll get back to you. And be sure to sign up to the community to get your GIS Day swag bag. And also, we're giving out ArcGIS for personal use licenses to all participants. Just let us have your email address and we will be sending them out to you. Wish you guys a happy GIS Day and go out there and do amazing things with GIS. Check out ArcGIS. We're building a lot of amazing products at Esri and they're a great way for you to get started. So next up, I'm going to be bringing you an excerpt from the recently held Esri Geodesign Summit. Geodesign is essentially a framework for creating and designing with geography and nature in mind, which is very key in redesigning and transforming our natural world with GIS and design in harmony. And so we're going to be looking at talk building with resilience in mind. So this next talk dives deep into how sustainability needs to be incorporated into our design strategy as we build for resilience against the many effects of climate change and all the issues that are facing Africa. We have to rethink how we build and how we design, and which is why geodesign is important. So in the next 15, 20 minutes. This talk will enlighten you, and I hope you find it insightful.
And how we need this. Well, hi, everybody. It's such a pleasure to be with you virtually today at the Geodesign Summit. I certainly wish that we could be in person in Redlands and having this conversation, but hey, I'll take it to be able to talk to you, the experts in geodesign, about resilience and what that means for us in public safety, the world that I live and breathe every day, and how we need this partnership, both from you understanding how we plan better infrastructure, mitigation projects to reduce the risk, to build the resilience we need across all of our communities at various scales. And so I thought I'd start by just defining what resilience means to me. At a simple core level, I think we can say it's the capacity of us as individuals, as our families, of our organizations and communities to quickly recover from some toughness, from some impact that has happened to us, whether that's a flood, a fire, a pandemic. It really is this innate toughness that we are looking to build as organizations, and the processes and the software and the technology that we rely on, but also just in the nature of what we do as organizations and the nature of what we rely on as communities to recover and move forward as quickly as possible back to whatever the future looks like. Now, all of us have experienced this in some way. I would say that 2020 actually puts us on a level playing field, and the fact that globally we are faced with a pandemic that is relying on the resilience of each one of us to endure, to prosper in the midst of this, and to move forward the best we can in our own individual ways. Now, at Esri, I helped lead our disaster response program, and 2020 was certainly a unique year. It obviously introduced the pandemic, where thousands of organizations around the world were faced with crises, looking to move forward, to understand and how to build and leverage the resilience that they had in place to move forward. But it also brought with us tremendous hardship. Fires in the Western US were the worst on record. The bushfires from 2019 to 2020 in Australia. Certainly looking at the Atlantic season for hurricanes, just a tremendous impact on those in the Gulf Coast of the US and the Caribbean. I would say that all of us can use that as a reference point for what resilience might mean to each of us. But what I'm talking about from a geodesign perspective, and why I want to have this conversation with you around the use of GIS for geodesign and increasing resilience from a crisis perspective, is that all of those crises that we've experienced and seen and read about on the news are increasingly complex, they're increasingly interconnected, and they're increasingly challenging for organizations and communities. Those are certainly driven by a changing climate, certainly increasing the frequency of those storms that I discussed, certainly looking at the impact of what they look like for the environment itself, leading to worse fires, and looking at earlier storms like tornadoes that we just saw in Alabama in January of 2021. But it's also us as individuals. So what we're doing around us in the built environment has a dramatic effect. The anthropogenic changes that we are inserting into the environment itself, whether that's technological challenges like the Beirut explosion, certainly looking at how the built environment and us as industry are polluting and adding to smog and air quality issues, or even just truly looking at urbanization and how we build communities, creating impervious services at scales that we've never seen, and introducing flooding into communities that have never experienced that before. Certainly all of the things that we do as a human on this planet impact that, in addition to what we're seeing from those natural hazards and climate change. And I could say you could characterize those into two main groups. Certainly our communities are challenged by the acute shocks of earthquakes and floods and fires and the hurricanes that come at us. You see those every day in the news. But we're also increasingly challenged by the acute shocks of earthquakes and floods and fires and the hurricanes that come at us. You see those every day in the news. But we're also increasingly challenged by chronic stressors, those things that are long-lasting, slow-moving disasters, if you will, that exist underneath the surface of many communities, whether that's looking at crime rates and violence or looking at how movement of people in and out of communities is changing both the built environment and requirements for that, and also looking at demographic shifts and the underlying inequalities that may arise for access to transportation. It all stems back to the fact that if we look at homelessness, if we look at aging infrastructure, we look at stressing our environment, leading to food insecurity and access to water, all of those have become much more increasingly systematic. The risk of each one of these hazards is increasingly systematic. I would say that it requires us to look beyond the hazard that we're used to seeing in front of us, not just focusing on the earthquake risk, the flood risk, or even looking at a built environment and looking at aging infrastructure and how to replace a specific piece, but truly starting to look across all of those hazards to understand the integrated nature of risk in front of us. It's certainly, we see that manifested in current contexts that we've talked about, whether that's looking at the growing population, the people movement around us, the built environment that's changing, how those then get impacted by those stressors, the slow-moving things like climate change. And certainly then there are those tipping points like earthquakes and floods and fires that eventually can catapult us into systemic failure, whether that leads to destabilization of currencies or even political unrest. This is the ability we have in front of us now to start to change the conversation, to adapt, to evolve our thinking to more of a systemic approach to understanding risk, to build the resilience we need to whatever crisis may be coming next. So I think maybe a better way to define this, other than my simple opening, is to go a bit deeper, to look at both the chronic stresses that are out there as well as those acute shocks and understand what resilience means. And I love the way that the Rockefeller Foundation defined it as part of their 100 Resilient Cities program years ago. I still think it holds true today. And it just says resilience is the capacity of individuals, my family, myself, of our communities together, institutions, businesses, and the systems that we rely on to survive, adapt, and grow no matter what types of chronic stressors or acute shocks they experience. It leans on that toughness that I talked about earlier, but it requires us to change the perspective, to drive towards an understanding of how we truly understand systematic risk, to look at all the interdependencies, and what better reason to look at GIS than that. So how would we move forward? What am I asking of you, and how do we see GIS playing a role in this idea of building resilience for crises response? Well, I would say there are 4 key steps that GIS provides that evolves our thinking beyond just response to what's in front of us, but truly allows us to step back, to build a better future, and to move forward. It relies on the ability to visualize and analyze that systemic risk that we started talking about, to truly understand that the past can't be a predictor of the future, that GIS and data science and location holds the clue to looking for patterns that exist between both those acute shocks and how they're going to exacerbate the underlying stressors that exist in our communities. It certainly is looking at how we ensure that the community is a part of this conversation, that they validate the assumptions that we're making, that they are included in the process, so that we design systems and we design projects that are inclusive and more equitable in the way that we distribute both mitigation priorities and dollars and grants to truly build the future that's better for all. And if you do your job well as planners, which I know you do, it's about planning and iterating on designs that truly address that risk at its core, that allows us to come together as a community to assess priorities and understand where we can have the greatest impact. And then how do we communicate the success of all of that together and the outcomes of those mitigation projects, the risk reduction strategies that are in place for individuals, for our communities, and for the world in front of us. So what does that look like in practice? Well, again, coming at this from a public safety and a crisis response perspective, I'd like to give you some examples of where I think GIS plays a key role, starting with visualizing and analyzing that systemic risk that exists. The 2 examples on the screen, I think, are great uses of GIS technology. The one on the left from FEMA, looking at the Resilience Analysis and Planning Tool, or RAPT, is a cross-cutting look at both natural hazards, those shocks that we talked about, as well as some of the underlying indicators of mobility, of inequality that may exist, of access to healthcare, to transportation, demographic profiles, and how they come together to paint a different picture than just saying this area is exposed to flooding or this area is exposed to risk hazards. They truly are looking at how people and the built environment and the natural hazards all around us come together. You see that playing out here in the pop-up, looking at one of the counties near where I live in Texas, looking at the percentage of population over 65 or who have a disability, who are unemployed, who don't have insurance to rely on that helps them recover individually as families should one of those shocks happen. And if you look in the bottom right, looking at the British Red Cross, coming back to the COVID-19 pandemic for a minute, another great example of looking at vulnerability indices that starts to dig into the population to understand at a deeper level more than just a hazard exists, but what it might mean for the people that we're working to serve. The vulnerabilities that exist so we can design projects that address those vulnerabilities at a deeper level and truly move us forward in a resilient fashion. If we look at the idea of inclusivity, so how do we validate our assumptions of data? I love this example from the Philippines Red Cross working at a national level, driving it down to the local level. It started with the idea that we certainly know where hazards exist for flooding, for tsunami risk, for earthquake risk. But what did the community actually experience in the middle of those hazards? Well, by being inclusive and inviting them to the table, they actually sent out teams into these communities, allowing the individuals to assess what flood risk looks like to them. They know that in that past event that building flooded, that street was closed, that this continually happens over and over again. Feeding that data back into the plan so that allows us to better understand locally what's happening and what are priorities to that community that may be impacted by the tsunami, by the flood, by the hurricane that may be coming their direction. That changes the assumptions. It changes the way we plan. It drives it to a local level and includes the people that are most impacted at the end of the day. And certainly then taking your design and planning backgrounds and putting that to use, all of that data coming together to drive an understanding of risk-informed designs. That means we can look at mitigation projects and look at variations of different plans and how we can adapt our communities in the face of the risks they face. The one on the left shows you what mitigation priorities might look like, various designs for doing either property buyouts or looking at raising elevations or changing the riparian area to better absorb potential flood impacts. The right-hand side just speaks to a broader detail. I thought this was interesting, looking at FEMA reporting the top 5 projects for mitigation dollars in the past year of 2020. I would say these hold true for many years, but it's looking at how we can actually understand where those buyouts should occur, acquisitions. How do we control the flood through mitigation projects? How do we build better infrastructure for utilities and for the road networks that we rely upon in our communities? How do we raise elevations for flood structures and even retrofit with wind for those on the coast impacted by potential hurricanes and strong winds? And then it's all about communicating the success, the outcomes of all this work together so that the community understands the priorities that they contributed to are making a difference, that the dollars and the projects that we're putting in place through grants and programs are truly targeting the right people to have the right outcomes at the end of the day. I love this example from the state of Indiana with their story map that actually shows their statewide multi-hazard mitigation plan. I just pulled one component of that out to keep the flood theme for a minute, looking at Indiana's risk for flood, analyzing both the floodplains and understanding the potential impact to people and the built environment, the infrastructure that we rely on. And what that resulted in is looking at the top right, where you see Riverfront Fort Wayne, a project that was proposed, allowing inclusive feedback to say, what do you think about this project? And then designing a waterfront on the right that allows for the community to take advantage of that, but also is resilient to the floods that occur quite often. By buying out property, by redesigning, by developing an area to absorb that, the community benefits, the risk is reduced, and the outcomes are better for all. So I just want to leave you with this, that you as geodesign experts truly hold the key. You know, in my world of crisis response and disaster response, it can seem repetitive that we are always working from the next disaster to the response in front of us. We go through recovery and we just wait to repeat that again. I would say that for us to be resilient, we have to break that cycle. We have to evolve beyond the response in front of us to the flood, to the fire, to get through recovery and to learn to take the lessons that we've experienced to understand how we need to mitigate that risk in the future, and then take over and design the built environment to change around us, to look to the future based on this integrated systemic risk that is around us for the people we serve and the places we live, to truly design projects that allow us to then focus on preparedness activities that both increase personal resilience in the community, but also long-term increase that organically. This is how we adapt and evolve and become resilient, breaking that cycle from response, recovery, repeat, to focus outside of that response phase where we can have a true difference in the planning and design in front of us. All of what I've just said, I think, truly paints a picture that the future in front of us is uncertain. But we have the ability through GIS to truly understand at a deeper level, to design at a deeper level, to build at a deeper level than ever before, the change that we need to build that systemic change that addresses the risk in front of us. And I love this quote that came out of the risk assessment done by the UN every few years. And I thought I would just leave you with that. For us to design and build solutions for a resilient future, we have to understand that we need to move now. This is the opening part of their story, the report that came out. In this age of data and information and connectivity, even though we can quantify more of what was previously uncertain, it makes apparent how much we don't know. What is evident is that change is happening more quickly and surprisingly across multiple dimensions and scales than we ever thought possible. We can no longer use the past as a reliable indicator of the future, and new risks and correlations are emerging in ways we have not anticipated. I would say that with GIS and through your design background and your plans and understanding systematic nature of risk, both of the acute shocks and the chronic stressors, we can better anticipate, that we can design a more resilient future and be ready for whatever comes next, whatever that crisis might be. So with that, thank you for the time this morning. I appreciate the opportunity to speak with you, and I look forward to learning from you as our geodesign experts on how we could better work together. Thank you.
All right. We just heard from Brian Lankos, who is the Director of Public Safety and Disaster Response at ESRI, who is chairing the ESRI Disaster Response Team, managing crisis management using geographic information systems. And I'm happy that there's a lot of work going on in geodesign.
Hello everyone, and welcome to
regards
the ArcGIS Data Reviewer Technical Workshop for this year's user conference. My name is Caleb Neal, and presenting with me today is Kumar Guarav. Moderating the live Q&A at the end will be Francisco Perez. We are product engineers on the Data Reviewer product development team here in sunny.
I want to go into a few details about how you can reach out to us and what kind of services that we offer to communities and cities that are looking to take advantage of this amazing technology called GIS. So Giseria is, like I said, a community of innovators, and as the head of the community, I manage events, I manage community engagement efforts and product design solutions that are targeted to community residents and managers, city administrators who want to leverage GIS. You can head over to our website at www.geoanalytics.com, where we offer a number of trainings and solutions tailored to communities. So if you're starting out and want to learn about the basics of GIS, we have a number of courses that are targeted to help you learn and gain foundations for fundamentals down to cartography and design and all the way to software development. And if you're a community and you need consultancy services to begin to deploy solutions and manage your data infrastructure, we are also available. And here's our email. You can reach out to us and we will be in touch. And finally, I'd like to let you guys know that we have giveaways. We have digital swag bags with GIS Day present, and we're also giving out an ArcGIS personal use license, which would allow you to get hands-on experience with the ArcGIS platform. And there's a lot of added benefit that comes with that. So I'm happy and grateful for you guys spending time with us, joining us. And it's been a pleasure the past few days reaching out to the community. So this event is going to be live on YouTube. You can watch it, and if you like to do a recap of all the innovative stuff, you can go on our YouTube channel, which is also going to be live for you as well. And with that, I would like to bring this event to a close, where we're going to have some fun time sharing and making merry. And thank you all, and happy GIS Day.
I don't wanna live my life for you, live my life for you. All over the news, all over the news. Only God and I know the kind of thing I do, the kind of thing we do. When I thank God, I got the lead. Say God, no, God the lead. All over I comforting me. When these people they come body me. When I thank God, I got the lead. Say God, no, God the lead. All over I comforting me. When these people they come body me. That's why I die sometimes. Me to end me and dies. I can feel the good over my they can live this life. Oh, my lady, I know. If I play you my cassette, anything you sell is a market. Try to they look from my aspect. They loud them at the handset. You. Never waste your time, never let you go. Top down, back to back, you the best I know. Oh yeah, you they blow my mind, blow my mind, blow my mind. For your love, I could change my life, change my life, change my life. Yeah, come here, that's big as big. I'm trying to steal your love. I'm guilty of it. I don't give a shit about telling all our business when I'm killing it, when I'm feeling it, kissing it and turning to another. Yeah, yeah, girl, I fuck with a hotter. Angry and you're dangerous. It don't matter, no. Cause your body controlling me. It don't matter now. And I know you see the same vision. Nobody gon' change how we live. Nobody gon' change how I feel about you. I want to give you whatever you want. Freaky, freaky for you. Show me what you're into. Girl, you just so right. Shower ya. I'm a little baby, mama. Even when my brain just did tanana. Only you baby like they my corner. Jando, yeah. Hola, this is for my baby. You see this girl, yeah. Now God they give up to me. You see this girl, now God they give up to me. You see this girl, yeah. Now God they give up to me. You see this girl, now God they give